Hello and thanks for joining me. Well, it had to happen eventually. I'm back in the mountains. Now it's about 5 o'clock in the morning. That over there is Anglesey. I'm not on it anymore. I never thought I'd be relieved to get off Anglesey because it's a lovely place, but it's great to be back in the mountains. And this is my 150th vlog, so hopefully it'll be a bit of a special one. That said, I've already been mightily disappointed. I had an epic ridge walk planned for today. I've walked up from the parking spot and I'm on the northwestern flank of Elidir Fawr, which is one of the northerly mountains in Snowdonia. But unfortunately, the cloud base is about 800 meters, and that means that all of the peaks are completely clagged up and there's nothing to see. Now, from a hiking perspective, I couldn't care less, but I do want to do some photography, so that really wouldn't work out too well. Luckily, knowing my way around these parts means that a plan B isn't too hard to find. I've got plenty of time, so what I can do is find something else to point my camera at in the meantime, and then if the peaks clear up later on, then maybe we can head up a bit higher. But for now, I'm going to swing round the flank of the mountain and come in at the top of the Dinorwig slate quarry, which should give me some views across to Snowdon as well, and if the cloud starts to break up, there might be some images to capture over there. The conditions are actually, apart from the low cloud, brilliant. It's a lovely, pleasant, warm morning. And one thing that I hadn't expected, the heather's starting to come out. It's really early, but there's these little splashes of purple and lilac along the lane that I'm walking on. So that just always cheers my heart, seeing the heather. It's a really nice time of year for me. And I know a lot of people don't really like summer landscape photography, but I do. Mind you, I like it all year round. So let's head on up for plan B and see if we can get some photography done. Well, I'm right at the top of Dinorwig Quarry, but the cloud base has come down to meet me. So it's like I'm sitting in this huge fog bank. Can't see anything. And I don't have a plan, well, I do have a plan C, but I'm going to wait it out because the clouds have a tendency to blow through quite quickly. So I'm not too worried. It's perfect time to have a pit stop, a bit of breakfast, and just enjoy being up at this sort of height, even if I haven't got a view. The air is clear. It's a lovely fresh morning. So there are far worse places to have a bit of breakfast. Well, it's cleared up and the morning light over on the ridges that run up to Snowdon Summit is absolutely spectacular. And as the clouds are getting dragged across it, they break up and the ridges peek through and shafts of light just hit them every now and then. You may have noticed that when I'm out in the mountains and I've got my pack on, my camera is never in my backpack. It's always on a clip here because the light and the positions of the cloud can change in seconds. You certainly don't have time to set up a leisurely shot on a tripod. And previously, I've missed shots when my camera has been in a bag and it hasn't been accessible as I'm walking. So this situation this morning, I've dumped my bag. It cleared just a few minutes ago, and I've been grabbing shot after shot. Now the light is still pretty low, and that's one of the great advantages of this camera is the in-body stabilization. It really does make a difference. I'm able to shoot images at a 40th or 50th of a second with no worries whatsoever with camera shake, even where I'm using long telephotos because I want to get in on those beautiful lines of the ridges, just those little gullies where the sun is catching them. So I'm going to take a few more images here. I'm at the very top level of the quarry at the moment. The scenery up here is absolutely spectacular, and we might get a little bit more detail going on later, but for now I need to take advantage of this morning light. Well now, I think the conditions this morning would be best described as changeable. I've climbed up quite a long way from where I was earlier getting those shots across the valley. And as you can see, it's clagged up again. I'm clear where I'm stood, but that cloud base down in the valley is probably 300 or 400 feet below me, so I can't really see much. Let me just first of all tell you where I am. I'm up right next door to the surge pool. Now the surge pool is kind of an open funnel sitting immediately above the Dinorwig power station, which is, I don't know, 800 or 900 feet directly below me. And what the surge pool does is that it releases the pressure when they close the valves on the flow of water from mainland Mawr. It's kind of like if you've got an old plumbing system in your house with high pressure water and you snap a tap shut, you'll hear the pressure wave run back through the pipes and it creates a knocking. Now with the colossal pressures they have in Dinorwig power station, they need a mechanism to release that pressure. So the surface of this surge pond is directly level to the surface of mainland Mawr. And that gives you an idea of how high I've climbed. And then the tube from the bottom of the surge pond runs straight down to the power station. What I've been working on down here is a really unusual perspective on the Lamberis lone tree. There may be other shots from up here, but I'm taking advantage of my 300mm lens at full extension. I'm also using the high resolution mode, which will get me an 80 megapixel RAW file that I'm going to need to crop in relatively tight. But I think you'll be able to recognize it, even though it's, gosh, I don't know, it's got to be 2 miles away. It's just a matter of whether or not I can get any contrast into it to make anything of it. But as with my last video, I'm prepared to share my results because it's such an unusual angle. Let me just explain to you why I was slightly disappointed earlier on when I set out at the bottom of the hill. Because it's sort of a landmark number, I know it's not a centenary number of vlogs that I've done, but 150 is sort of semi-special. And also it's obviously my first one in the mountains for this year, notwithstanding the trip I had out with my good friend Darren back in early March. But I kind of had a whole sequence of really interesting hikes lined up for this year. And of course, the spring conditions have been fabulous and we've been locked down. And so what I had in mind was to revisit the summit of Agan, which is where I spoke to you from on New Year's Eve. And I was also going to do the summit of Cana de Villiast and then walk up that ridge. So Agan was a revisit because when I was there on New Year's Eve, it was completely clagged in. I couldn't see more than 50 feet. And Cana de Villiast, simply because the end of this ridge overlooking the island is the closest bit of mountain scenery that I've been able to see from my home for the last 4 months. And so when I've sort of leaned on my back wall and gazed at the mountains, this has been what I've been looking at. So even though in mountain terms, for photography, the scenery, it's not the most spectacular. Everybody heads for the Gliders and Snowdon and various other places, but it's the one I've been staring at all that time. And I thought connecting those two peaks with a lovely ridge walk up around 900 meters would have been rather fabulous. Now, it is sort of thinning out a little bit, but an awful lot of the time I've got available is gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head straight up here and see how far I get, because straight up this ridge behind me leads up to the summit of Elidir Fawr, and that's a 3,000 foot peak. I've camped from up there. I'll put a link to that one. That was spring last year. But I'm just going to keep climbing up and see how far I get. Actually, for today, in terms of photography, I'm quite pleased with what I've got so far. So if there's nothing else to see further up, I won't be too disappointed, and I'll call it a day and head home with a big smile on my face. So let's see how we get on. Well, I've had an absolutely fabulous hour on the summit of Elidir Fawr. I've also met some really nice people. I hadn't seen a single person, and then 4 or 5 people have pitched up here. And it was just really nice because we sat around in the cairn and had a nice chat. And that's the thing about coming to places like this. When you meet other people, you tend to have something in common with them. Love of mountains. Now, of course, I wouldn't have put myself somewhere like the Gliders today or Snowdon Summit because, you know, they would be too busy for my liking. Coming up here, actually, I was quite surprised. I'd been worried about losing my fitness during lockdown and I'd struggle. But actually, I found it, dare I say it, quite easy. There's quite a long scree to come up the last 100 meters or so. It's not as bad as the scree that takes you up to the summit of Elidir Fawr. So if you go up through the Devil's Kitchen up to Llyn and then you'll know that scree up there. That's a killer. This one isn't too bad. It's not quite as loose and fine as that. So today, really, not so much about photography, although I've taken quite a few images, which of course I'm sharing with you along the way, and I'm sure I'll have some more to share with you at the end of the video. But it was really just a catharsis, a get out of the house, climb the first mountain you come to. And even though I didn't manage to do the full route that I had planned, I've ended up on the summit that I was planning to end up on anyway. As far as my camera settings goes today, everything's shot at about f5.6, ISO 200. I've taken full advantage of the stabilization in the camera, as I mentioned earlier. But I think I'm going to leave it there for this one. I'm going to head back down past the top reservoir at Marklin Mawr, which is the reservoir for the Dinorwig power station. And there's a rock outcrop there that I'm going to attempt a shot. It's something my father's mentioned to me called Elidir's pillar. It's a pillar of rock that rock climbers have to be very brave to attempt it, to be honest. I'm not sure it's going to make that good a photograph because it's difficult to isolate it from a background, but I'll have a go at it. So however that turns out, I'll share it with you. I'm starting to get into sharing stuff, warts and all, these days. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you ever so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, why not subscribe now and join me next time? Cheers.